Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for coming back. I certainly appreciate you joining me again. Let me explain what happened earlier today. I messed up. It was all on me. I was thinking in a different time zone and set everything up and didn't think in Detroit versus LA time zone. So that's completely on me. Um, our guest tonight is quite an accomplished journalist, and he's someone that I enjoy reading everything he's putting out. He's not just a journalist, he's an author. He has a couple of books that he's put out. He has a long-standing history, especially when it comes to dealing with the Church of Scientology. So I am so thankful to have him here. I am really honored to have him as a guest. And before we get started, as we always do, it is time to bring in our good friend from Clearwater, Chad.
Thanks, Bo. We'll get right to work since we got a lot of work to do. 80 degrees in Clearwater, Florida. Precip is 0, 61% humidity, and Roscoe advises from the sky cam that the wind's at 9. Back to you, Bo.
Told that dog stay out of that helicopter. Thank you, Chad. We'll have Chad back in a little bit later. And before we get started, my guest tonight, as I said, has a very well distinguished career in journalism. He has done quite a bit, and he became quite the target for the Church of Scientology during that career as well. Nearly 27 years now of dealing with the Church of Scientology, but there's so much more to this man than just that. If you would please welcome Tony Ortega. Hello, Tony.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So if you could just give us a brief introduction as to who Tony Ortega is.
I'm a half Mexican kid from LA who somehow got into journalism at some point after college, and I ended up working for a company that ran all weeklies. I started at their Phoenix paper back in 1995, and that's where I did my first story involving Scientology. And they moved me around a lot. I was at their Los Angeles paper, Kansas City, Fort Lauderdale. I finally ended up, they moved me to New York to be the editor-in-chief of the Village Voice for 5 years, from 2007 to 2012. I left then and I wrote a book about Paulette Cooper. And I've been covering Scientology independently at my own website. And now I've gone to Substack. I'm now at tonyortega.substack.com. Okay. John, just somewhere along the line, I gave myself the job of daily beat reporter about Scientology. I just thought that was kind of missing. And I did that in 2011, and I've been doing it for the last 12 years, writing about Scientology every day. Yeah. And I'm so fortunate that I've hooked into a great community of really knowledgeable former Scientologists and other experts. And we just try to find something new every day. And of course, the big new thing right now is the Danny Masterson retrial, and that's why I'm in Los Angeles. I'm staying with a friend, and that's where I am today.
Now, with getting into journalism, who were the folks who you looked up to, and what actually got you interested in journalism itself?
When I was a kid in LA, I really idolized the LA Times, and I loved columnists there, like Jim Murray, was it Bill Murray? Jim Murray, Jim Murray, the columnist, the sports columnist, was my hero, and Conrad, the cartoonist. Wow. I loved that stuff, and I really looked up to them. But I didn't know if I wanted to be in daily newspapers or not. I just wanted to be a writer of some kind. I wasn't sure how to do that. I ended up doing a lot of grad school. I ended up at UC Santa Cruz in the 90s. And I was just working on literature and that kind of thing, starting to teach some. But then I had moved to Phoenix in the summer of 95. And that's when I discovered this thing, the Phoenix New Times. I'd never seen anything like it. It was a free weekly paper. And this was in the mid-90s, so it was fat. It was full of great stuff, two major features every week. And those stories these people were writing were so in-depth and smart. And I thought, see, now that's what I wish I was doing. So one night, I just spent all night crafting the best possible email I could write to the editor and just said, look, you got anything for an overeducated, underemployed 30-something who wants to sink his teeth into a great job? And he emailed me back, said, I want to meet you. Wow. So I went down to the office. I mean, my timing was perfect, John. Back then, these papers were making so much money, and they had so many pages, so much room, they could take a chance on somebody like me that, I mean, in hindsight, I had a pretty good background for it. When you're a college instructor, you learn how to, handle people and get information from them, and
Right.
learn how to write, and you're an editor. So in all those ways, I kind of was training for this kind of a job, and they took a chance on me. And so I started writing some things for them, which they really liked. But then after a few weeks, my editor said, look, if you want a permanent job here, you're going to need to put some red meat on the table. I'll never forget when he told me that. And I was kind of nervous, like, what does that mean? I got to get a serious story. And that's when I noticed this letter to the editor of the daily paper from a guy named Rick Ross, who today is a very well-known cult expert.
Right.
And he was basically complaining to the daily paper that they had totally missed the whole point of his story, which was, he had lost a lawsuit, but they ignored the fact that the plaintiff against him had been recruited by the Church of Scientology.
Yeah.
I thought that sounds juicy, right? So I contacted him, and I got to do the first really full profile of Rick Ross, and as part of it, write extensively about the Church of Scientology. That was November 1995. So that was my first story about Scientology. And the nice thing about that company, the New Times, was that I covered a lot of different things: crime, courts, education, business, science. But I could come back to a story,
Right.
because I had developed sources. And so I moved to their Los Angeles paper a few years later. And boy, then I was in the belly of the beast, right? And so then I got to write my first story about Graham Barry. I got to write my first story about Torrey Christman. So I was really developing that as kind of a specialty. And it was just always so fun. I just really enjoyed learning about these people and what they had been through, and digging up documents, because there was always just a huge amount of material about Scientology online, but it was kind of a mess. There were lots of things that seemed to be missing or didn't seem right. And so that's what has always been something that kept me interested, was trying to solve some of these little mysteries about things. And over the years, I've been fortunate that I've been able to find, for example, the whole Snow White thing, the whole arrest. I mean, the raid started with this spy, Michael Meisner, who was arrested by an FBI agent and then turned evidence. Well, I not only found Michael Meisner today and what he's doing and how amazing that is, I found that FBI agent. And it turns out that the FBI agent that arrested Michael Meisner in this DC law library was one of the first female FBI agents in history.
Wow.
And I couldn't wait to talk to her. I talked to her about that, and it was really interesting. And she told me I was the first reporter that had ever even bothered to call her and ask her about that. Yeah. And if she hadn't stayed, her bosses were like, forget it. Some couple of guys arrested in the library. Who cares? She's like, no, there's something here. There's something going on. I don't know who these guys are, and she stayed with it and helped, make that into a real case. And of course, that led later to Meisner running to the FBI, and they had the big raid in 1977.
Wow.
So I felt like that's my role. Is there's a lot of missing gaps in the history, interesting mysteries that are never solved, and I'm just always interested in trying to find that information. So that's why I stay interested day after day for all these years.
I think that a good journalist and a good detective have a lot in common. If you're a good, decent detective, you want the truth, no matter how damning it is for your case or not. You want to know the truth, and you want to know what's going on. A good reporter is going to want the exact same thing. You pretty much got to be like a dog on a scent. You've got to get on it and keep going, knocking on doors, hitting every possible angle that you can until you find that what you need. And I think a lot of that's lost in law enforcement, because the focus, especially in larger departments, is how many cases am I clearing off my desk daily. And I think I see that in some of the reporters too. It's I can get this good flash story. I don't have to do a lot of work in it. And I really miss that old school kind of vibe with a reporter or a detective, as somebody who's willing to get out there, put themselves on the line, and do what needs to be done for the job.
I tell you what, it's a terrible situation in media today. It's a lot of the people I used to work with are out of the field now, because it's been so fragmented, and you're right. The emphasis is on what can we get hits on today. It's not developing sources and getting that deeper story. And it's hard for me to get those deeper stories sometimes, but it's worth it, I think, to develop that kind of knowledge in one area and try to really dig into something.
Right.
And I just find it interesting. I just find Scientology endlessly fascinating.
That's the same here. I've said the story 1,000 times, but I was a teenager and I saw the volcano video, and my mother, yeah, it was for its time. That was an amazing commercial.
It was.
And my mom is a devout Christian, so I had to sneak out and get that book, and I brought it back home. I started reading it. I got about 3 chapters into it. I'm like, what the hell is this stuff?
It's awful.
Yeah.
The book is terrible. I'm always amazed when I meet somebody that says, well, I read Dianetics and I loved it. And so then I was like, what? You loved it?
Yeah, that's not a must read mine. Yeah. I'm reading, and you got to figure I'm maybe 14 years old, and I'm realizing this is garbage. And, so how someone who's an adult who's reading it and going, oh, this is great. Yeah, you might need a little more than Scientology in your life. I think that that's not my problem. And folks, if you have any questions for Tony or for me, make sure you put them in there with the @ symbol and then Poe, and that should fill in unless you're on your phone. But I'll see them, and just make sure you get them in there. We've only got Tony for about an hour here. He has other appointments he has to make, so we want to try to get as much packed into this as we can. So let me go back to my list, because you got so much good stuff going on in there. And that was one of the things I wanted to know. So what do you see in journalism, in the future of journalism? How do you see it going?
Well, like I said, the whole media field's been so fragmented and so difficult for newspapers to make a living anymore. People are finding new ways. I mean, I like this Substack platform. It's really helping me with subscriptions and stuff. And excellent. A lot of people are going to it because it puts the emphasis on quality writing rather than, clickbait and silliness that you get. And it really puts the emphasis on quality because, and stick around, you've got to deliver something over time rather than just some quick hit that explodes, So, I mean, I was trying to explain to people how tough it was for newspapers because, but newspapers do care about things like awards. I say newspapers, I mean all news organizations.
Right.
News organizations do care about winning awards, doing top quality journalism. So, you would have, I don't know if you saw the movie that they did about the Boston Globe pursuing the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Story. I think it was Spotlight was the name of that crew. Major news organizations like to have a crew of that, special investigative reporters that will dedicate a year or more to one story. And so you have say 1 or more reporters, and they're working hard. They really go deep. They get incredible interviews, and after a year, they come out with a big blockbuster series, and it's great. It does, it gets 1 million views, and a lot of people talk about it. And then the next day, their little paid intern puts together a slideshow of some celebrities, and it gets 4 million views.
Yep, and that's the amazing thing.
The owners of the paper are like, okay, so I'm paying these huge salaries for these reporters to put out one story that gets us 1 million views, and the teenager puts, you know what I'm saying? It's
right.
It's become a really difficult thing for commit themselves these.
You're breaking up, Tony.
Substack, and you'll see some others. As far as the future of it is concerned, I mean, I try to be optimistic, but it's been difficult. Period.
I think that the internet has been such a devastating force. It's been an amazing thing, but it's also been absolutely devastating in so many areas. And we're so interconnected with it nowadays that everybody has, like I've said 1 million times, everybody has a mobile TV station right there in their pocket. They have their own camera. They have everything they need to do their own stories. Right. I mean, you see, like with my thumbnails for my videos, I have to do them a certain way that's going to get the attention of people. Because there's people out there who they have no idea about my channel, but they see a great thumbnail, and the hopes is we get them in here and then they see the content and they like what they see. And it's just sad because I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be one of those people who is polarizing one way or the other. I want to look at the truth. I want to be supportive, and I want to build a community of support. And, it's just impossible not to do those kinds of thumbnails or do the clickbait kind of stuff, because that's how it is. I think for me, one of the things is if I do something that's absolutely 100% clickbait, I'll put it right in the thumbnail. This is clickbait. And people like that. We've got, I don't know if you know him or not, Apostate Alex.
Sure,
Tony,
sure.
you are awesome. Thank you for everything you do. Your journalism is incredibly valued and valuable in the world of exposing Scientology's practices. And Alex
he's relatively new on the scene, but he's really
Mhm.
making a splash. I think he's doing some really good things, and I'm looking forward to working with him in the future.
Excellent.
And he knows Alex, I'm so busy with this darn trial, but I'm going to get to the stuff we've talked about. I'm sorry, I'm so slow right now. I tell you what, these long days in court just wear me out, and on the weekend I'm just trying to ride my bike and relax a little bit.
Let's see. And we've got Goldie here. Dan, thank you, Goldie, for that super chat. Mr. Ortega, I know it's tricky trying to predict a jury, but do you feel more confident about a conviction this time?
It's so tough. I hear what you're saying. I think the prosecution has done a better job, a much better job. My complaint after the first trial was that the prosecution didn't really put together a strong narrative. And I know it's tough, Poe, in court, everything's so fragmented, one witness after another. But the prosecution still didn't really do enough, I thought, to put together a story. The jury wants to hear a story. Well, let me tell you, this time, they're putting together a story. They're putting together a narrative. And I think all of the witnesses are doing better this time around. However, I do think that some of the same issues that there were in the first trial are still here now. Right. And so that's why it's really hard to predict. You hope that the jury looks at this rape trauma expert, Barbara Ziv, and she's just excellent explaining how women who are attacked by men they know are going to act differently afterwards than women who were attacked by strangers. And what she said, even though she didn't study the case and she was a blind expert, the things she said fit perfectly with what the Jane Does have been saying. And then we bring in Claire Headley, who does such an amazing job explaining the terms that the Jane Does have been using and confirming what they've been saying, that Scientologists are told they cannot turn in a fellow Scientologist to the police. So you hope these things are sinking in, but we just don't know. And I look at them when I can. It's difficult for me because I'm typing and keeping an eye on the witness, but every once in a while I will look over, and I have to say that I think with one exception, every time I've looked over, the jury looks really interested in the witness and is paying attention. One time I looked at them and they were all kind of looking down at their laps like they were making notes or something. But I think the jury's paying attention, but you don't know what they bring to it. You don't know what backgrounds they have. And just keep in mind, everybody, please, this was always going to be a difficult case. These kinds of cases, an acquaintance attack, and where some time has passed, those things are difficult with or without Scientology. So I hate to try to predict anything, because I say that the prosecution is doing a better job and then everybody gets hopeful. But honestly, we won't know until they go into deliberations and come up with something.
I think you brought up an excellent point there. You got a couple of excellent points. Number one, we don't know the background and history of these jurors. We don't know what they've dealt with, if they, what kind of life history they've got going in there. That's always a turkey shoot in itself. And then you have this case in itself is unusual in the fact, as you said, we have a lot of time has passed between the time of the assault and the time of prosecution on it. We have no real forensics on anything. And a lot of people are so conditioned from things like CSI and shows like that, where they're expecting to see a ton of these forensic experts coming in there and giving their thoughts on everything. So it's a lot different. It's more of listening to a story and trying to decide whether you believe it or not.
That's
So
it.
you
That's
see
it.
those
And
things going on in
we
there.
don't know if they're going to believe it or not. And
Right.
I hate to get people's hopes up because I don't read minds and I don't know
Right.
what the jury is saying or thinking, and we'll just have to wait.
And it's almost impossible, because you have many people who are, once they get into a jurist role, most of them turn into a stone face kind of person. They'll sit there and they'll be paying attention to everything, but they try to show as little emotion as possible because, yet again, they've been conditioned from television and movies that juries aren't supposed to show expression. I think a real tell of what's going to be happening is once they've concluded everything, if the jury's going to be asking for anything, especially like testimony from Claire, those kinds of things, those will be real telling kind of actions from them.
Yeah, questions and readback.
Yeah.
That's the big question. We'll see if they ask for that. And then, as far as Masterson and his family is concerned, I know people hear that they, what they look like and stuff. I just feel like same as the first trial. They just are they got their TRs in. They're Scientologists, right? They got their TRs in. They have their poker faces on, and I don't think there's anything to read into that. I mean, based on some of the filings going into this, I think Cohen's confident that he's going to get another good result for his client.
Okay.
So I just don't, they're all very, very polite to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're even polite to me sometimes when we're going out the door, but it's just something that it's very difficult to read anything into anything,
That's something that always confounded me was, here it is. I could go out to lunch with an attorney, be friends with them, and the minute I'm on the witness stand, we're mortal enemies. And then after it's over with, we shake hands, go right back out and go to lunch again. So that's I learned early on not to take anything personal from an attorney. It's their job to discredit me. It's their job to attack me. So it's hard. How did they cross-examine Claire?
Yes. So Claire, listen, I would love to have seen Claire up there for hours. I mean, she could have filled in people about so much stuff, but they had her on for a limited purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They both sides agreed she would not talk about her own experiences. She would not talk about escaping from Scientology, but they basically just wanted her to go over some of these terms that the Jane Does have been using, things like knowledge report, ethics protection, and to confirm the idea that Scientologists are trained. They cannot go to the police and turn in a fellow Scientologist. She did a great job with all those things. So then Sean Hawley got an opportunity to cross-examine her. And basically she was trying to question her qualifications. So what Sean Hawley did was she said, well, the grade chart goes all the way to OT 15, but you're only an OT 4, right? And, for those of us that know something about it, it was hilarious because I guess she was trying to convince the jury that made it sound like Claire wasn't very qualified. But of course, Claire's qualification was that she was a Sea Org executive in the Religious Technology Center at the headquarters. So she was thoroughly trained in management. She'd been in management since she was 16. So the fact that she wasn't very high on the auditing world, counseling is, that she was only OT4 was just really kind of laughable. But I mean, what else did they have? I mean, so, they also were trying to question her neutrality. I think Claire did a great job because, again, she was there for a limited purpose, just to explain what ethics protection meant, for example, and that these women knew if they tried to turn in Danny Masterson, a celebrity with the church, that they were going to get all kinds of blowback from the church itself. In that way, I thought she did a really good job.
Excellent. Yeah, I had a lot of faith in Claire going into this. I think of the people they could have picked, she was probably the most level-headed person they could have put in there. And like when we were talking about some of the people I've known in the past, sometimes you take someone like Claire, very soft-spoken, very calm-mannered, but that presence of someone like that can be very powerful and have a deep impact on other people. So I think she was pretty much the perfect person for that job. Marilyn Honig. Hi, Tony. Thanks for all you do. What is the biggest life lesson you've learned from covering the abuses of Scientology? And thank you for that super chat.
probably to be very paranoid and not trust anybody who might be trying to get into my life. It's like,
No.
I took some basic precautions. They run various operations against me, so I do try to be careful about new people coming and approaching me. I guess that's the biggest life lesson, just to be careful about who you talk to. But I learned a lot of things. I mean, I've been so grateful that I've gotten to know so many ex-Scientologists like Claire, like Tori Chrisman, Bruce Hines, Leah Remini, Mike Rinder, just met these wonderful people and gotten to know their stories. And I've had an opportunity to tell their stories. And so, a big lesson there is that there's, be careful about stereotyping Scientologists, who they are or why they got in. There's a lot of different reasons why. Some very intelligent people have gotten sucked into Scientology. Look at somebody like Bruce Hines, for example, that is literally a college physics instructor, and he got sucked into Scientology. Or Louise Schechter, who I was just talking to the other day. She's brilliant. She's, really intellectual, smart director, and just a fascinating woman with amazing sense and great writer. She got sucked into Scientology. So that's another lesson I've learned, is not to make assumptions about who gets pulled into this thing.
Well, at the point you made about was it Hines? You said, who's the physicist,
physics teacher,
the
college physics teacher.
Yeah, the amazing thing is, speaking with Joe Rogan and listening to his podcast, and you've got Eric Weinstein and a couple of other amazing physics people who've come on there. And I think that they really took it as such an affront that Hines became part of the Church of Scientology. They're like, well, it's not like I'm a Scientologist or something, while Joe's interviewing them, and it's just out of nowhere. And I'm listening to these people, and these are some of the most brilliant minds in physics that there are. And just out of left field, they're coming out with hatred for Scientology. And I think that really shows you something, that someone that's in their level of intelligence and things that they're doing, and it has made them so angry that someone could fall for that. And I think that, well, especially with people who work in science, they don't realize the human aspect of it. People want to be part of something. They want to be feeling like they're making a difference in things. And these organizations make you feel like you're special. So it's not surprising to see, folks, you're a physicist. You might be getting accolades from the community, but what are you doing with the rest of the world? And so you see this group comes along, they tell you, you're fantastic, you're awesome, come join us, be part of us. You're getting all this great respect. So, I understand. I've talked about it 100 times on here. You can't judge people because they joined an organization. It's trying to get them to understand what they're part of and get them out of it is the big thing. So let's see. Hans Christian Schwartz. Did you come up with the regular reporting on Scientology yourself? In hindsight, it seems the Scientology death spiral started in earnest around 2010.
I'm not sure how to date the death spiral because it's still around, but I would say the height, Scientology's greatest extent, was around 1990, when, as a result of that Dianetics TV campaign you were talking about with the volcano.
Right.
Was that pre-show or was that in the show?
That was during the show.
Okay. So because as a result of that, Jefferson Hawkins is the guy that dreamed that up for them.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, they had this constantly running Dianetics volcano ad, and were selling books like crazy. And because as a result of that, by about 1980, they had their biggest extent, which was about 100,000 active members around the world. They've never had the millions that they claim. Yeah. But in 1991, May 1991 is when a Time magazine cover story came out calling them a global cult of greed. And it's been shrinking ever since then. By the mid 2000s, Jefferson and some others and I got together. We talked about this, and their estimate was down to about 40,000. So from 100,000 to about 40,000 by the mid 2000s. Today, I think it's only about 20,000 active around the world. Now it's shrinking less now because I think the people that are left are really hardcore,
Oh
and
yeah.
they aren't leaving as much as they were some time ago. Look, there's always been great reporting on the Church of Scientology. I'm not saying that I invented anything here. There was wonderful reporting in the Daily Mail of all places in the 1960s. Paulette Cooper, of course, in the 70s. I've written about her. And then in the 80s, you have people like Russell Miller and John Atack and Ben Croydon. And then in the 90s, of course, the guys at the LA Times did amazing work. And the Tampa Bay Times, well, it's called the St. Petersburg Times back then.
Okay.
And then after the Time Magazine piece, though, Time Magazine was sued for $400 million by the Church of Scientology. Time eventually won that case, but it cost them millions to win.
They took a beating.
So there was a big chilling effect from early 90s into when Mark Ebner and I started in the mid 90s. But there were a few of us then. Richard Leiby never stopped. He's amazing. He's at the Washington Post. He was writing throughout that period. Abner was doing great stuff. I was starting out. And, there were certain publications that would take them on and certain that wouldn't. And I was very fortunate. I was with the kind of publication that would. The person that kind of changed all that was Tom Cruise in 2005. Because once he went out and did all that crazy stuff on Oprah's show and then arguing with Matt Lauer, and he did one in Australia too, he kind of opened the door again for publications that had been shy about writing about Scientology. So Rolling Stone started paying attention, 2006. New York Times did a good piece in 2010. So there was a lot more reporting coming online at that time, thanks to Cruise. And I had gotten to the Village Voice by that time. I got there in 2007. And then, Anonymous happened in 2008. And then that was another thing that opened the floodgates. Right now, suddenly there's people all over the world protesting. And I was starting to pay attention to that. And every time I would put something about Anonymous or Scientology on the website at the Village Voice, it would go crazy. And part of my job as the editor of the Voice was to make sure our website was being read. So then about 2011 is when the thing with Marty Rathman happened down in Texas. And I started reporting on that every day because I just thought that was an incredible story, that he was being besieged in his Corpus Christi home by these squirrel busters. As I was reporting on that every day, I was getting huge traffic. I was very, they told me very soon I was the most read blogger in the whole company across the country because I was reporting on Scientology. And then I decided, nobody else is doing this. I'm going to do this every day. I'm not saying, don't mistake me. I'm not saying I wasn't the only person reporting on Scientology. There was a lot of good reporting going on. I was just the poor schmuck that decided to do something about them every single day of the week. I don't know if that was a great career move or not, but it was something that I decided to do. And I really enjoyed it, and it got me a really loyal audience. I still have people that were reading with me that were reading my Phoenix New Times stuff 27 years ago.
Oh yeah. And a lot of people don't realize how long you've been doing this. That I find it amazing. Well, we have so many new people that are joining daily, and it's the work of Leah Remini and Aaron Smith-Levin, Mike, and Mark and Claire.
The floodgates have opened. Scientology's not suing anybody, so why not join in?
Now, do you believe that is because DM himself is being called into any lawsuit or anything that happens? They're trying to get him personally involved is one reason why there's not so many lawsuits anymore.
I think, Mike Rinder has talked about that they of course are vigorously defending lawsuits like the one they just got derailed in Tampa, the trafficking lawsuit, but they're not filing too many lawsuits. I mean, the last media company they sued was the Washington Post in 1995, and that they lost that right after they lost the Time Magazine one. The last time they sued a person was Debbie Cook because she had said some things online about David, or said some things in an email about David Miscavige, and that backfired on them. So they're being very selective. They're still following people, harassing people, smearing them online. But
well, you and I were talking about that. I've had my own personal ghost that's been following me, so that's they're still pretty active about it. And Goldie just put up a link there. If you feel like telling the Tampa Bay Times how much you appreciate Tracy McManus reporting on Scientology over the years, you don't have to be a subscriber, but at least you can let them know how you feel about it. And that's in the chat stream there, folks. And I think that's another person, Tracy McManus. Talk about someone who has taken a beating.
She does great. She does such good work, and she's so fair to both sides. She's just an old school, hardworking reporter who's trying her best to get the truth out. She doesn't have an agenda. And look at the way they're sliming her and smearing her on Twitter and stuff. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
But if Scientology thinks that's going to stop us, I mean, it doesn't. I just ignore as much as possible. I mean, I know they're smearing me every day on Twitter, and I just don't look at it. What's the point, Scientology? You're not going to stop me that way.
Yeah,
they're their own worst enemy in that way, because, with both Tracy and myself, if they would just call us and give us their side of the story, we're happy to include that. But instead, they wait till after the story's out and then just smear us.
That's something that's always surprised me is that for true journalists like yourself and Tracy, if they just gone to you and said, here is our side of it, here's what's going on, their voice would have been heard in your actual article instead of being seen by, 1/10 of the people who read the article in their online smears.
Right.
Just, this whole thing about the cloak and dagger, you can't know anything about Scientology, so ridiculous. Let's see, we have Juliana. The Unbreakable Miss Lovely is one of the best books I have ever read. Any favorite stories with or about Paulette that didn't make the book?
Oh boy, Paulette. I don't. You're trying to get me in trouble with Paulette, aren't you? Thank you. So that was my book. Came out in 2015. It's The Unbreakable Miss Lovely: How the Church of Scientology Tried to Destroy Paulette Cooper. She wrote one of the very first books about Scientology back in 1971 called The Scandal of Scientology, and then they were harassing her from even before the book came out through the 80s. And even to when I was interviewing her for that book in the early 2010s, I realized from some things she was telling me about who was taking her to lunch in New York. I said, you didn't know that guy worked for Scientology? So they were still keeping tabs on her all those years later. Gosh, something that I left out of the book. Well, she's got a memoir out now, and I'm sure she's filled in some gaps. But I think I put just about everything I could in there. She's got such an amazing story. She was born in Belgium, and her father was actually taken by the Nazis and sent to Auschwitz. He was arrested 2 days before she was born. He never got to lay eyes on her. And both her parents were killed at Auschwitz, and she and her sister ended up in an orphanage. And luckily, after the war, were adopted by this New York. Paulette was adopted by this New York couple, the Coopers, and so then later she became this magazine writer in Manhattan, very glamorous life, and decided that this Church of Scientology story might be her first big one, with getting a book and everything. And the guy she was paying for it for years and years. But no, I put just about everything I know about her in that book.
And I through it all, you see strong presence, you see this determination in her, but she's such a lady, and she's so nice and so peaceful. That's what I've taken away from everything I've seen with Paulette.
John, she's also a kick in the pants, man. Don't sell her short. She's nice and everything, but she's also she tells a good joke. She's a lot of fun.
It's like we were talking about me working with Rosa Parks, and we were talking about someone like Claire earlier. Very, very soft, but there's so much power in there, and people just they overlook someone like that so easily, and that comes back to hurt them really good. And Lord knows she certainly took her lashes for that. Let's see. Denver Steve-O. Tony Ortega, what is the likelihood of someone infiltrating the jury like the foreman in the first trial?
Well, look, let's be careful with that word infiltration. This was a guy that says he's former law enforcement, and they asked him, they asked on the jury questionnaire, has anybody in your family been convicted? He left that blank. Turned out his son had been convicted when Chris Shelton asked him about that, why didn't you fill that in? He said, I haven't lived with the guy for 25 years. I didn't think I should have to. Well, that's wrong. He's wrong. He should never have been on that jury. But the idea that he was infiltrating it for somebody, there's no evidence of that. And but it is a shame he was on that jury. And, they did their best this time to ask more questions and really tell them again and again, you've got to be honest on these forms.
Right.
And we just have to, I mean, look, John, you were in this whole system yourself for many years. You know that we have our laws and we have our rules and we do our best, but it's an imperfect system. And we hope we have 12 people that answered their questionnaires legitimately this time and that they are there to listen to both sides. And all we can do is hope with this. The judge did her best to make sure that we've got the best jury we can get.
But I think also there were a lot of people came out with the clickbait style stuff saying he had infiltrated, and it was a lot of us didn't really get the full view of what actually happened with that foreman. And I thank you for explaining that, because
I think he was an arrogant guy that thought he knew better than other people, and it's a shame that he ended up on that jury, and he was wrong. He should have answered that. He should never have been on the jury. And it's just a shame. But I don't know if that's some kind of operation or something. I haven't seen the evidence to that.
And I mean, again, thank you that, because there's so many people that was just all over the place. It was an infiltration. This is what's going on. That's it, point blank. But, now you're bringing in the perspective of, was it really that somebody filled out the form? He should have filled it out properly. And this is what happened. So yeah, thank you for making that point straight on that. Terry Ray has a good one. And I've noticed it. TMZ, Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, they're not mentioning the case. And One Love 5100 was saying the same thing. Here we have all of these channels that are all about the paparazzi and all the disgrace going on with Hollywood. Where's all the stories about what's going on with this case?
I'm not sure how to explain that. In the first trial, they want us all of us presser in the back row. And most days, I would say we had between 9 and 12 reporters. We all get to use our laptops. There's a whole history to the electronics. I probably don't have time, but I caught Vicky Poboreski giving a live feed to David Miscavige in the prelim, and Judge Olmedo is making sure that doesn't happen this time, but she's allowing reporters to have laptops in the back row as long as we don't transmit live. We can't tweet during testimony. We have to go in the hallway to do that. So there's between 9 to 12 of us in that back row through the whole first trial. You had people from the networks. You had people from the local ABC and that kind of thing. You had Hollywood Reporter, Rolling Stone, Deadline, Court TV, Law and Crime. They were all there every day during the first trial. Okay, this last Thursday, there were 3 of us.
Wow.
Me, the ABC 7 producer, and the LA Times guy.
Is it possible that people are just so, these kinds of things are happening so much that people just aren't even caring?
I think the fact that it's a retrial and that the testimony is probably largely going to be like it was the first time. Mm-hmm. We had a pretty good crowd the first day, and I'm sure a lot of them will come back for a verdict. But in the meantime, they're just not going to. And then the other thing was, this was being covered pretty closely last time by the trades, right? Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and The Wrap. Those 4 were all over this last time. Well, right now, they're completely tied up with the writer's strike.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I was told, I was asking those reporters, am I going to see you this time? Like, Tony, we're so swamped with the strikes, because not only have the writer's strike, but then the contract for the directors and actors also don't have time, particularly for a trial where we're redoing stuff they've already heard. So I have a feeling it's going to be very low attention until we get to a verdict, and that's just the way it goes. So in the meantime, you got me. I'm in there doing my best, bringing you reports 4 times a day, and you can get all the notes about that. So hopefully that's.
And Goldie's been doing a real good job of posting links to your site and everything that you've got. Now you have let's see, you have the YouTube channel, you have the Underground Bunker, and now you have the stack. The
main thing now is TonyOrtega.substack.com. Please sign up for free emails. If you do that, you'll get all of my reports from court the second I put them out, and any videos or podcasts. I do have some videos and podcasts that I reserve for paid subscribers because I want them to have a little extra stuff. But really, all the important reporting you get for free just by signing up free emails. And the nice thing about Substack is my story comes to your inbox the second I put it out. You don't have to come to my website. So that's my main thing. I still have the TonyOrtega.org site where we actually have the conversation going. A lot of commenters talking there. And then, I have a YouTube that I mirror some of the stuff I do on the Substack, but that's, not my main thing.
Where do you find the time? I mean, my goodness.
Oh, it's so hard during a trial, John. I'm just, because I have to get over there kind of early. Mm-hmm. And then Judge Omedo is really a stickler about getting things going. So right at 9 a.m., she'll start the testimony. And I'm trying to give you, look, I'm not the court reporter. I'm not writing down every single word, but I'm trying to get a gist of everything that's said. So for example, what I try to do, like Deputy DA Reinhold and Mueller and Defense Attorney Philip Cohen, they do a big wind up on their questions sometimes. And I'm so grateful. So the DA will say, well, at some point, did he indicate to you that, and I just skip all that, right? I get to that, and then he'll say, like, did he say that you should come over? And so I will just write, did he say you should come over, right? I skip all that other garbage.
Right.
So you are getting a very good sense of what is asked in court, but you're not getting the court reporter's version that's got all that extra useless verbiage. So now when somebody's giving a long response and they get really emotional and they get going fast, it's a little harder. I'll put stuff in parentheses. That's my indication that I'm paraphrasing. I'm just doing my best to keep up, John. I want to give people a sense of what it's like to be in the courtroom. And some of the people that have actually been in the courtroom and then read my transcript have told me that it's very close to what they remember.
Excellent.
So that's basically what I'm trying to do.
And if you want to know every dotted I and crossed T, then that's what transcripts are for.
You can buy the transcripts, exactly.
I'd rather read the Cliff Notes version and still know what's going on. So it's amazing to me. Let's see here, Jay Dice. Tony, may I call you Tony? Do you believe the attention span of the public doesn't allow for much more than one huge R-word case at a time?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because during the first trial, we literally had the Harvey Weinstein trial just down the hall on the same floor in the same building. And a lot of those reporters I'm talking about were running back and forth between the two. Right. And of course, the coverage tended to go to Harvey Weinstein and not to Danny Masterson. This time, of course, yes, we've got that big case in New York that's getting a lot of attention. And it's funny, I do not have time to look at the other cases right now. But one day I was just glancing at a report of that, and they were talking about the defense attorney and the way he was attacking the victim. And boy, it sure sounded familiar. It sounded just like Philip Cohen. But I'm staying away from that other case.
But, also, is Danny Masterson really the big star that he used to be anymore, too?
The reason why I'm there is not because I care that Danny Masterson was in that 70s show. It's because he's a Scientologist, and his family is a very important Scientology family, and that these 3 victims were Scientologists at the time, and all of them went through this issue where Scientology did not want them to report. And so you get situations like with Jane Doe 1. The DA told us this. Unfortunately, we didn't get it from her directly, but Lisa Marie Presley had told the DA that Scientology had told her to encourage Jane Doe 1 not to go to the police. They were close friends. So that's why I'm interested. It's really showing how Scientology works and operates. And that's why there's been a lot of interest in the public about the Danny Masterson case. But I wouldn't say it's because he's that big of a star.
Right.
And also, didn't he play kind of a creep on that 70s show? So it's not like it's some icon of
Well, I
moral
think it was on
turpitude.
the Netflix one, The Ranch, where he got fired from that one because of the things he was doing. So, and yeah, I mean, like with a lot of people, my wife and I, we were huge fans of that 70s show, and we started watching The Ranch. And it was specifically because you had Ashton and you had Danny were on there. So, yeah, thinking back, he does have some star pull to him.
He does have
Uh,
some, yeah.
yeah. And Apostate Alex, I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we deeply appreciate your dedication to the cause, Tony. It's so valuable to have someone inside the court reporting like you do. And that's true. I mean, you're doing something that a lot of people, it seems like so many, if it's not the Kardashians doing something or Ariana Grande, something like that, they're not interested in it because, as we talked about earlier, the clickbait value of those things. But you're in the trenches. You're actually out there doing the work that real reporters should be doing, and we appreciate you for that.
I appreciate those compliments, but I'm just also fortunate there's no cameras in the courtroom. I mean, if there were cameras in the courtroom, nobody would need me doing this. But
Right.
this is the kind of case where you've got women who are, keeping their names out. They're going by Jane Doe's,
Right.
and I know they're using partial names in court, and you will see those names in other news organizations. But I refuse to do that. I'm trying. I still use Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3, and I just saw an opportunity where, without cameras in the courtroom, I know people want to know what's going on in there. So I'm just sitting there typing like a fool as fast as I can.
And they're not allowing you to do any recording of it at all?
Oh, there's no recording whatsoever.
Okay.
That whole floor is the ninth floor is a secure floor. So there's no photographs in the hallway. You have to leave the building if you want to record anything. So yeah, it's very strict. But some of the cases on that floor do allow cameras. But Judge Almeida, no, because of the nature of the case.
How do you feel about Judge Almeida?
Yeah, I really admire her. I think she's really not just fair, and she's, as she says, she's calling balls and strikes. She's very efficient. She keeps things moving. She's very serious, and she's got these attorneys, both sides get angry about things, and she knows how to take care of business, but she's also very friendly and very welcoming to the witnesses. I just think she's really sharp, and she has allowed in Scientology to a great extent this time, and for really detailed rulings over that. I just think that this case could not be in better hands.
Excellent. I've admired a lot of the rulings that she's made so far. I see in some of the other cases that are involving Scientology, the judges seem to be going light-handed on things. And I've said it before, you see in higher profile cases, a lower court judge will be a little bit more soft-handed on things and let the appellate courts deal with it than having to deal with the backlash themselves. So it's good to see a good judge who's willing to stand up and make things.
Well, in these civil cases, we've got these judges that just don't give a crap. I mean, was a contract signed? Okay, a contract is a contract. You have to go to arbitration. I mean, we've seen numerous cases derailed now. The most recent is this one in Tampa, major case of trafficking with top-notch attorneys representing these plaintiffs. And the judge just said, there's nothing I can do. You're going to have to go to arbitration instead. And it's brutal. I mean, it's just, Scientology has found a way to make it very difficult for former Scientologists to sue. And I'm not sure what we can do about that.
Yeah, it's like you said, a lot of these judges, they just don't care. Let's just keep the cases pushing through the court. And as long as I'm not violating any laws or any policy, then what's it really matter? So, but I see that we're coming up on 55 minutes here. We got you for an hour. Any last thoughts in this last 5 minutes here?
No, I just, I really appreciate the questions and the compliments, and I'm glad that people are enjoying this coverage. And I just, I'm writing down everything everybody says. I'm really not trying to weigh it one way or the other because, it's. I know some of the things that Cohen does infuriate people, but we need to know what it is so that we can. So I want all the information there. And yeah, at the end of the day, I do a video and I express some of my own opinions about how I think when things went.
Right.
But I'm not a handicapper. Please, guys, I don't know which way this case is going to go. It's a tough case. Prosecution's doing better. These women, I feel for them. The third time they've had to do this under oath. And I especially feel for Jane Doe too, because she had just started her cross-examination on Thursday, and then they broke for 4 days. So 4 days she's got to wait to go back to cross-examination by Philip Cohen. I just feel for her. This has got to be a tough weekend for her. But I think all three of them have held up really well under cross-examination. And we just have to hope this jury is paying attention and will weigh the evidence fairly. And we'll see what happens.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really honored that you came here and were part of this. And you've opened up a lot of different things that we didn't know about, especially like with the jury foreman. It's good to have good, solid, honest information about these things. And I think that's very important. And I think far too many of the new young journalists don't get that. And it's good to see someone who's really committed to that cause. So thank you so much, Tony. I will be in touch with you on email. And if you ever need anything from me, just reach out to me. I'm always there. I'm always willing to help, sir.
Thanks for having me on, John. It was really fun talking about your background with you. That's really interesting stuff.
Thank you. Excellent, sir. Well, we're at our time, so we're going to let you go. I'm going to bring Clearwater Chad back in, and we're going to begin on our second point there. But again, thank you. It has been an honor to be able to speak with you about this, sir.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So as we get ready to go on the second part here, we knew that Tony, let me straighten this chair out. My daughter has busted this chair up. I'm going to kill her. We knew that Tony had a very limited amount of time, and I was so thankful that he gave me the amount of time that he did to be here with us, and it's been quite important. So now I want to start talking about something that has been the focus of a lot of things that are going on, and you see it in the news a lot lately. You see it on YouTube, and that is we have a lot of people around that are doing something called police impersonation, and it is just an amazing thing. And so as we get ready to get started here, let me, I'm going to add in a screen share here, and give me just a second. I love doing this stuff, but, the thing is that there are so many people out there that are doing this, and it's so easy, and they don't understand the damage that they cause when they do these things. And to me, it's amazing. So let's, go ahead here. All right.
Tonight, well, first up here at 10, take a look at these badges. They may look real, but no, they're fake. And a man accusing them to impersonate law enforcement now faces some real charges. Aside from those badges, he had an emergency light bar, a body camera, a dash cam, and a gun inside his phone. And there's more. Fox 15's Kyler Jones is live out.
And as you see, what's going on with these things is you have folks that are able to get out there, and they're able to go on websites, online websites, and they can purchase fake badges. They can purchase light bars. They can purchase the things that they need to make their vehicle look like a police car, and they're pulling people over. And to me, that's absolutely amazing that people are able to do these things. You don't know if it's one of those things that really burns us as police officers. What are we doing there, Chad?
Oh, sorry about that, Poe. I didn't realize we're on the air. Getting some tan. It's good enough for the astronauts, Poe. It's good enough for Clearwater Chad over here. Good for you, too. Got vitamins and minerals.
And folks, if you got any questions about the police impersonation or anything like that, go ahead and put them up there. We're going to keep going. Shauna P. Law Nerd. Besides Jeremy DeWitt, LOL. Well, Jeremy DeWitt is probably the most famous of the police impersonators. He, as I know it, he is actually a convicted police impersonator. He is also a convicted sex offender and a convicted felon. And so those mean that he can never be a police officer in real life. What Jeremy DeWitt was doing was he was the owner of an organization that did funeral escorts in Florida. And some of the videos that came out about that guy and what he was doing were just amazing. He is literally one of those people that you see it happening and you're just dumbfounded that he's actually doing these things. We're going down the road 100 miles an hour and he's out there zimming in and out of traffic on his motorcycle. He's yelling at people, "Are you a police officer? I'm a state agent," things like that. And then he even had the nerve to go on Dr. Phil and talk about, "Oh, I'm not a police impersonator," even though everything he's wearing says I'm a cop. And it's not saying it literally, it's saying it in the way that it portrays it. It's a police style badge, police style uniform. He's wearing motor police style pants, the kinds that bulge on the sides, and he's got the long boots that come all the way up to his knee. Everything about him says, I'm part of law enforcement. And he's got the flashing lights, the sirens, and he was violating a lot of state laws on it and getting arrested multiple times for it. And so I want to break down some of the reasons. I'm sorry, it's hot in here. We actually got into the 80s today and here in Michigan, and wow, after days and days and days in the 20s, 30s, and then suddenly we get hit with this. So I'm just trying to deal with it. I can't open the window because I live 1,000 feet from a railroad track. So no telling when we're going to hear the train horns or we're going to hear trains rolling through. So
go grab some Tang, Po. It'll
Thank
cool
you,
you down.
Yeah. Thank you. And Batgoat says the same thing. Have some Tang. So what we've got going on is you have to look at some of the reasons why people actually become police impersonators, and there's a wide variety of them, but the main reasons are you have folks who can never be police officers, and that's for multiple reasons. They can't pass the testing, whether it be the actual physical handwritten testing that they have to take, or they can't pass the physical testing. And believe me, just the testing to be able to be hired by a police department in many states is pretty tough. But if you're in good shape, if you're in pretty good shape, you don't have to worry about it. And quite honestly, the written testing isn't that bad. It's long. I remember when I took it, it was 300 questions. So, but you got folks who can't pass these tests. Then you have the fact that some of them, they're convicted felons, or they're convicted of charges that would prohibit them by state law of becoming police officers. You also have the folks that are, for one reason or another, it's just the easier path. I can't be a cop, but you know what? I can act like a cop and I can do all this stuff. And there are certain situations that bring them into it. Personally, there was a corporation in one of the cities that I worked in that had their own security department. Well, suddenly from overnight, the security department went from looking like security guards to suddenly they look like SWAT team members. They're driving black SUVs, red light bars on them, full sirens. They have everything set up like a police department. On the door, on the shield on the door, had the triangle in it where you have the police shield, fire shield, EMS shield, and they were calling themselves emergency response, but none of them were paramedics, none of them were EMTs, none of them were fire certified, but they were all doing security work. And so you have a situation where their employer was pushing them into what was literally being a police impersonator. And to give you a story about that, I was on my way to meet a friend, and there's a road that goes right through the middle of their property. And as I'm driving down this road, I hear a siren behind me. I look up, and in my rearview mirror, I see red flashing lights, flashing headlights, and there's a siren going off. So I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be something to do with the fire department or something like that. So I'm pull over to the shoulder of the road, allow them to get past me, but they didn't. They pulled in behind me, and the next thing I know, I've got someone getting out of the vehicle wearing the external carrier, which looks like the bulletproof vest over the uniform, but the SWAT type thing or the military style carriage of it. And here it is. This person gets out and they come walking up to my window. I look up at them. I'm like, "Can I help you?" License, registration, proof of insurance, and employee identification card. I looked at him. I said, "Who are you?" And they repeated it: license, registration, proof of insurance, employee identification card. I'm not giving you anything. You need to tell me who you are. Suddenly, that person's hand went to their gun. And it was at that point I realized they were wearing what is called web gear, which is the nylon velcroed belt, holster, and all that, which a lot of law enforcement officers have gone over to because it's much lighter than wearing the leather. And he's got an actual firearm in a holster on his belt. And at that point, I'm like, "You're seriously going to pull a gun on me? Why did you even stop me?" And at that point, he tells me, "Well, I stopped you. The speed limit's posted at 25 miles an hour, and you were doing 29 miles an hour. Who are you? Who do you work for?" I was actually a police lieutenant in the city that this was taking place of. And we had nothing like that. And we had, here it is. We have, this person showing up, pulling me over. So I say, "All right, you know what? I'm getting my cell phone. I'm calling the police. I'm not dealing with this." So I reach to get my cell phone and he actually pulls his gun out, points it at me. And I'm like, "Seriously, you're going to shoot me for getting my cell phone?" And at that point, another member of the security team pulls up. He comes up beside the guy and he's got his hand on his gun. He looks at me and realizes, "Oh, crap." And he tells the other guy, "Put your gun away." And the guy goes, No, this guy's reaching for something." He goes, "That guy's a cop. He's a cop in this town. Put your gun away." So they get him to calm down a little bit. And I get my phone. I call the police department and I said, "Get me some cars over here right away. I'm about to lock this guy up." And so basically our chief showed up. He says, "You go on, do your business. I'm going to handle all this." But that's a situation where you have someone who has no actual law enforcement training who is trying to be a police officer because his employer tells him that he suddenly has this newfound power and that as long as he's on their property, he can do what he wants as a security officer. So you have those kinds of situations that are bringing people into impersonating law enforcement officers, and the dangers that come out of that. Just from that story alone, we have someone who pulled a gun on someone without having any reason to pull a gun on them. Yeah, that's just amazing to me that someone would do that. Marjan, why was he doing it? To steal money? Talking about Jeremy DeWitt. In the case of Jeremy DeWitt, I don't think it's a matter of trying to steal money. He was making good money running this business. He had a lot of top-notch equipment. I think it is this desire to feel important in a lot of people who impersonate law enforcement. They want to feel like they have this, "I have this authority over you. You have to listen to what I'm saying." And, one of the problems with that is as police officers, that's not how it works. Most people are just, I don't care. It's a cop. What do I care about these things? So what these guys have to do is they're not finding real crime going on. So they have to take something that would be a minor instance and turn it into a full-blown felony to where they can actually act like they're police officers. And that's another thing that often happens with people who are impersonating law enforcement is they're looking for this respect, this attention, this admiration. "Oh my gosh, you just saved all these people from this dangerous person." There's the video of the guy who's driving around with his young daughters in his car with him. A guy goes driving by, makes him mad. He pulls up, he's yelling at the guy. He's got his car decked out like it's a police car. And it ends up with him chasing this guy, coming up to a certain point. The guy literally puts his truck in reverse, backs up into this guy's car. This guy jumps out with his gun and starts shooting at a moving vehicle. One of the first rules of law enforcement, you don't shoot at moving vehicles unless you have very specific parameters. When this guy drove his truck off the guy's car and started driving away, he was no longer a lethal threat to this man or his children. But here it is. This guy is firing at a moving vehicle in the middle of a neighborhood. And stray bullets, we all know what happens with stray bullets. I mean, there's how many stories do we have to hear of children who've been killed by stray bullets? So it's those are the kinds of things that we're looking at with it. Now, in some cases, we have okay, yeah, Annie, I will get into that. Things that you should do. I'm going to be getting into that in a little bit here. So certain things that you're going to want to watch out for. There were people who were doing these. If you're getting pulled over, the first thing that you want to know, if the person walks up and they're in any way they look suspicious to you, ask them for their actual police ID. Every law enforcement officer should be carrying their police ID with them, a department issued ID card. If you're feeling unsafe, you feel like you're in a situation where someone is impersonating a police officer, dial 911. Call the actual department where you are at, call 911 and tell them, I've just been pulled over. I'm not sure if this is a police officer. I'm scared. And they will tell you, well, ma'am, that's one of our officers just pulled you over. We can confirm that. All right. That's what you're going to want to do. Do not just drive away. Okay. If you take off, you pull off and you have one of these, I'm going to say it, nutcases who want to play police officer, and they pull a gun and start shooting at you. You don't want to do that. If they go to pull you over, and one of the big things you don't want to do is if you're getting pulled over by an actual police officer, you do not want to keep driving. All right. You want to make sure that you don't get yourself caught up for fleeing and looting, which in most states turns into a felony at a certain point. What you want to do is you want to pull over in a very public area, very well lit if it's at night, but you want to make sure you're in an area where there are a lot of people that can see what's going on. And you want to make sure that you're calling 911, calling that police department and saying, hey, I'm getting pulled over. Is this an actual police officer that's pulling me over or not? And, some of these impersonators are in some very convincing vehicles and outfits. I went online and went to the biggest website for buying anything in the world. And as I'm looking at it, one of the things I typed in was police emergency lights. You can literally buy red and blue strobe flashing or LED flashing lights to put on your personal vehicle. So those are things you need to watch out for. You've also got the fact that there have been a number of instances where people have downloaded apps on their phones, and they're literally putting their phone up on their dash, and it's flashing red and blue, and they're trying to pull people over. Those are things you need to watch out for on that. But the biggest thing is you do not want to get into a confrontation. All right. A legitimate police officer is going to come on and they're going to ask you license, registration, proof of insurance. It's going to be a very formulated way. And you look out your window and here's a kid that looks like he's 16, 17 years old, weighs maybe $110 soaking wet. And he is, he's wearing a emergency green vest that says police on it, but you see no badge. You see nothing else that would indicate that this person's a police officer. I'd be very leery of that person, as to what they're doing. And that's one of those instances where I would call 911 on that. Me as a police officer, I've had people that have approached me that are not law enforcement and trying to claim that they're law enforcement. And I've even had officers who were from outside their jurisdiction and in another jurisdiction approach me and try to badge me and say, hey, I'm a cop. You shouldn't be doing this. And, then that's when I pull out my badge and go, well, I'm a chief of police. You want to tell me where you got any authority to be doing that? So, and what you find most of the times, the people that are doing that they're not actual police officers. They're volunteers to a police department who've been given some kind of badge or some kind of ID. And a good story on that is I was in charge of our reserve and auxiliary program in the department I retired from. We had a guy that had come on and things looked good with him. He looked like he was doing really good. He was volunteering. He was getting out there. He was really seemed like he was solid. One night, as the sergeant on the desk, the command officers from my department at that time, we would man the desk and we would answer the phones. We would dispatch the calls. We took care of all the paperwork behind the desk. I get a call and it's a woman screaming, officer needs assistance. Officer needs assistance. What's going on? She told me the name of this person. It said he's in pursuit of someone. What the hell are you talking about? Why is this person chasing someone? I immediately sent cars over there, and while cars were en route, I'd called for the corporal to come in and take the desk so that I could go over there personally. On the way over to that incident, while I'm waiting for my corporal to get in, I hear she's telling me how someone was outside of their home being very loud. This person went out, flashed his auxiliary badge, which he was not supposed to be having anywhere but on his uniform, told the person they need to calm it down or he's going to arrest them. The person took off running and he took off after him. Okay, well, first off, there's nothing to arrest that person for. They've done exactly what you told them to do. They're no longer being loud and being disorderly in the neighborhood, and they're now out of the neighborhood. So why are you chasing the person? When I arrive on the scene, he has this person on the ground, handcuffed, and has gone through and taken everything out of their pockets and laid it on the ground. And what's bad about it is this person actually had narcotics on them. So you can't just ignore that. But the problem is this person acted way outside of any scope that they had. I literally grabbed him by his collar and, what are you doing? Well, this guy needs, I'm making an arrest. Well, under what authority? Well, as a reserve, you're not a reserve officer. You're an auxiliary officer. You haven't gone through the reserve academy. Even if you were a reserve officer, you have no arrest authority. Well, I'm making a citizen's arrest. Well, what are you making a citizen's arrest for? Well, he's got these drugs on his person. How would you know that unless you made an unlawful arrest in the first place? So snatch him up, take him in, and we couldn't ignore the fact the other person had the narcotics on him. But everything as it was taken care of. The problem is you have someone like that gets out of that situation and they go and they join another organization. And it wasn't a year later, I am driving down the road and I see what I believe to be a Michigan State Police SUV on one of our side streets with its lights going. When I pull up, I realize that it's a Ford Ranger with a cap on the back of it, and it's painted in Michigan State Police colors. It has the State Police use what are called a gumball. It's a big rotating red light that they put on the top of their car. And that's been one of the things they've used since the beginning of time with Michigan State Police. So as I pulled up, I realized this isn't a Michigan State Police car. This guy's got this big dome light on the top of his car that's flashing. He's got lights in his grill, lights in the back of the truck cap. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and I just can't believe what I'm seeing. Suddenly, out of the house comes walking the person that I had arrested and taken, had removed all of his police equipment from him. And he comes walking out, and I'm looking at him. I go, what the hell are you doing? Oh, well, my nieces and nephews wanted to, they wanted to see my lights. No, what are you doing with these lights? Well, I'm working for such and such city, and I have a letter from their chief of police telling me I can do this. And I go, that chief doesn't say what you can do in my city. So what I did was I ended up impounding his vehicle, charged him with impersonating a police officer. When he got in front of a judge, he put that letter up there. The judge goes, that's not this city. And he was actually convicted of it. But what you have is someone that is literally trying to get everyone to look at them and, oh, he's a cop. He's important, and you see that a lot with these folks who are impersonating police officers. They want to be very confrontational. They want to tell people, you need to do this, you need to do that. The law says. Police officers were much more chill about things. We're not coming up and just screaming at you right off the bat. And you'll see that a lot with these impersonators. And deep down inside, there's some kind of problem going on there where they're wanting to get this attention. They're wanting people to look at them. They're wanting to acknowledge that there's some kind of powerful person. And it's a very scary situation because someone like that, you don't know what they're willing to do to get that attention they're looking for. Jennifer M., a court bailiff pulled my cousin and myself over when we were teenagers trying to be a big shot. He was mad when I called him by his name and told him to back off. We went to the same church. One of the things you have to worry about in that situation is court bailiffs have in some states have a lot of power, and it's, here in Michigan, we have what are called constables, and what they primarily do is they serve papers from the courts, they do evictions, things like that. But you literally have court constables that are driving around and in police cars. Boy, I just made my hair a mess there, didn't I? They're driving around in what look like police cars, and they're generally old police cars, and they say constable right on the side of them. I mean, you get down into Texas and Louisiana, constables are real things. You have constables that take the place of an elected sheriff. So you have to be careful about those different kinds of things, and you have to be knowledgeable on what kind of powers they have or don't have. But the big thing is that if you feel uncomfortable with it, you get on that phone and you dial 911. Because if you have a police impersonator or someone who's stepping outside their boundaries, they need to be caught. They need to be put in jail, because this is the kind of thing where people can actually end up losing their lives because of it. There's a report here in Detroit. You had a man who was impersonating a police officer, got into an argument with an older gentleman, jumps out of his car and starts shooting a guy. The guy jumps out of his car. He's wearing the ballistic vest. He has a cap on that says police, comes out with his gun and starts shooting the guy. All right. That's just insane. But you need to be careful, and you need to watch out for, situations like that. It happens all over the country. It's not just a Florida thing. It's not a California thing. It's everywhere. Here in Michigan, we had a young man who was, he was a volunteer with a department on some kind of program like the Explorers program or something like that. He was driving around in a Chevy Tahoe, blacked out, and on the back of it, it said Canine Blake. And the way he came to prominence is one day he was getting onto the highway behind a car and decided to rush past that car and start brake checking them. And then he slowed down, got beside the car, rolls his window down, and he's screaming at the woman driving the car, not knowing that she is one of the hosts of a daily morning radio show. She gets to the radio station. She's freaked out. She's crying. She gets on the air and she starts telling the story and what's going on. People start calling in going, hey, I've had similar instances with that same person in that same vehicle. And he ended up doing time for it, and he made it on the news. So it happens everywhere. You just have to be vigilant. Never stop in a dark, unlit area. Never, if you can, get to a well-lit area, get to a spot where there are a lot of people, and you want to make sure that there are people that can see what's going on. And you want to look for all the telltale signs. There's a man who stopped a car, and I forget what state it is, but he walks up to the window and he shows a badge and says he's a federal agent. Well, he has no identifying paperwork with him, which is what I was saying, as in you have to have, police officers will have an ID card that is issued by their department. And the thing you have to remember is this guy walks up, he's scaring this woman and her son. Her son's like, this doesn't seem right. Her teenage son is like, this doesn't seem right at all. And yeah, sure enough, he was not with some government agency. He couldn't produce any ID, and he had, he was just trying to push his weight around and act like he's a big guy. There's also a story of the gentleman who got his vehicle impounded. He's looking at facing impersonating police officer charges, and he actually went on the news to explain that he needs all the equipment that he's got, and showed how he had outfitted his car, which was a former police car, and he outfitted it with all this equipment to make it look like a police car. You're going to look out for things like if their car has on the side of it emergency response. There's no actual police logo on there anywhere. Let's see here, Marjan. Did you hear about the case in New York subway where the guy got killed by the army guy? No, I didn't. I know about the gentleman in the bodega who was attacked by he was in his 50s. The guy was in his 20s. The guy's girlfriend had pulled a knife on him. It was all over a 25-cent bag of chips or something. And this guy's in there slinging this old man around. And he was a very small statured man. This young man slinging him around. He's got him, telling him he's going to kill him. The guy turns around and stabs the 20-year-old, and the kid ended up dying. And they tried charging. They didn't try. They did actually charge and arrest this gentleman for homicide. Thankfully, it was dismissed and the guy was allowed to go. But man, that's the crazy stuff with that. And here we go. Apostate Alex, side tangent. I'm just looking up this Tang drink Chad is drinking earlier. We don't have it here.
Oh, wow.
94% of it is powdered weight, is sugar. Geez. Yeah. Well, Alex, the thing is with something like that, oh my gosh. The thing with something like that is that it's for kids. And the big claim to fame for Tang was, as I was growing up, is it's the drink of the astronauts. And then we find out the astronauts never actually drank it. But it was a part of a marketing ploy, and it made it huge. It is a sour, sweet, orange tasting drink, and it's delicious. So
it'll get you to the moon, Poe. It'll get you to the moon.
I mean, you guys don't have Vegemite in the UK. You don't have Tang. I feel so sorry for you.
So now there's a market now that we could start importing it and making some money.
Yeah, we should start with the PTS Tang. Let's see. Ex-Scientologist, is it okay for me to not stop immediately if I get pulled over and drive to a safe place where I can park my car legally? You have to be very careful about that because they turn the lights on and you're going, and the problem is that they hit the siren and you're still not stopping. The question is that officer going to jump out of the car and drag you out of the car and handcuff you for fleeing and looting? And you have to be very, very careful about that. If you can, you get yourself to the safest spot that you can. Roll the window down just enough to pass information if you have to, but make sure you're on that phone and calling the department, finding out if this is an actual police officer. Renee B, thank God a police officer was already at the Allen Mall. It saved a lot of people. I live close by, and that's the thing. What a lot of people don't talk about with police, they talk about the problem with police overreact, or police do this or police do that. Does anyone talk about the PTSD that police officers encounter? We see the most atrocious things happening on a daily basis as part of our job, with no real support system in place to help us in dealing with these things. And, that's, when you think about it, police officers are human beings too. And we have a lot of things going on. We have a lot that we have to deal with as a law enforcement officer. And, 90% of us, we deal with it, we go on, but a lot of them, there are a percentage of them that are going to at some point break because they can't handle it. They weren't made to handle the job in the first place. It's sad. But yeah, Alex, the Tang is it's interesting. It's sour, sweet, orangish, but you just love it when you get it's a nice ice cold Tang. My goodness.
I'll bring some to the event in October.
There you go. We'll bring we'll have to do up a series of the Clearwater Chad Tang. Yep. So see if we can get your picture on the side of a can there. Let's see. Jay Dice. If they sponsored the astronauts, that's enough to rot my gut with some Tang. I'm telling you, back in the day, you had these different things that were associating themselves with all these different big things like astronauts and fighter jets and things like that. Had nothing to do with them whatsoever. It's like one of the things that when we used to go to the Kennedy Space Center and the museums and things like that, you'd see the freeze-dried ice cream, and they called it astronaut ice cream. That never was a thing, but it was freeze-dried ice cream, and the kids went, oh, and they went nuts for it.
I don't know if this is true, Poe, but I heard, may or may not be true. I heard GM used to give every astronaut a brand new Corvette every year.
I think that was with the originals, like the Apollo guys and all that, but I don't know about how far that went. But
they probably can't afford.
I don't even fit in a Corvette. My goodness. Let's see, Lady Veritas, were you able to turn off at the end of the day? Fortunately, I had the great support system of my wife. She is, she's my sounding board, and she's my confidant, and so I was able to turn off. You got to remember, most days were very eventless. You took stupid calls that you never should have been called on in the first place, and but it was those really bad ones, and you need someone to talk to. I truly believe that a lot of officers need to have the ability to go see a psychiatrist or a social worker, someone that can help them, because there's a lot of trauma and stress that comes in with the job, and it's horrible. So let's see, Batgoat, that's true, Gemini and Apollo. So back in those days, those astronauts, and you had guys that were Yeager with the breaking the speed of sound, Chuck Yeager. Those guys became rock stars, and it happened very quickly for them. And suddenly overnight they were on everything. So, it's not surprising that GM would turn around and give them a Corvette for doing it. Let's see here. PT Bird question. I was pulled over on a freeway. I drove maybe 50 feet bypassing an off ramp. The police officer yelled at me for not taking the off ramp. Is there a requirement to take the off ramp? No, but the requirement is that you pull over. You're supposed to pull over as quickly as possible in the safest situation that you can. And that's just an officer being an ass, is literally what it is. Why didn't you turn off at the ramp? Well, I'm scared to death. I got a cop pulling me over on the freeway. I got all these things to think about. So I'm supposed to think about why, that too. That's just an officer who thinks too highly of themselves, and they're an ass. So, yeah, back up. They were celebrities. Everybody loved them. They were the stars of the world. Those guys were. Marilyn Honig, thank you for all the great info and for keeping the hubby totally engrossed. Hey, Duncan, what's up, brother?
10x it.
Yeah, 10x Duncan. Usually falls asleep in front of the TV by now, but not now. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Lady Veritas, what was the funniest call you went on? Oh my gosh. There were a lot of them that were just hilarious. I don't think I can speak about the funniest ones because they'll get me demonetized. But yeah, we had some interesting ones. Gentleman who zipped himself into his own pants. Yeah, that one was crazy. And literally the EMS showed up, and he had zipped something up into the zipper of his pants. And my first question was, why aren't you wearing underwear? That would have stopped this whole thing. And the EMS got there and literally just ripped the zipper down. That was the only way to handle it. And then took him to the hospital. It didn't cut anything vital. We're talking 4 portions that got caught, but it was very painful. Let's see. I got called to a house because people were taking photos in their house party or something like that. And they believed they had captured a ghost on film. I got there and I'm literally looking at these pictures and I'm like, first off, what do you want me to do if you have a ghost? It's not like I have a special gun. We're not Ghostbusters here. But it actually, as I'm looking at it, it was literally dust got captured in the flash. So there's some crazy stuff. If you guys got any questions, go ahead and ask them. We're going to break down in a little bit here. Chad, what are your thoughts on these things we've been talking about?
First, I'm amazed at the people impersonating the police officers. I've seen a couple of the videos before we talk, but it's amazing. This is all brand new to me.
Oh yeah, it's and if you look at it, there's literally channels devoted to Jeremy DeWitt and the things that he's done. And what is surprising me is that the guy hasn't been beaten half to death by some of these people that he's going after. He has no authority, but he certainly tries to make people think he does. Marjan, you think all of the police departments should have the same car in the whole of the country? No. You know what? It's going to be different state to state, city to city. And the thing is that with our department, we were a Chevy department. We only use Chevy vehicles for our department. There are other departments where they prefer Ford products. So it's going to be almost impossible to do it that way. Plus, if you start going into something like that, what you're doing is it's going to end up in a bunch of lawsuits from the different manufacturers and things like that. So, you know, a lot of these departments have the right to have their own identity. Where it's different is in the state police. They pick what they're using, and that's what goes all the way across the state for the state police departments. A lot of smaller departments will use former state police vehicles, and they will, letter them out with their own stuff. But the thing is that when it comes to these things, it's all going to come down to the departments have the right. Each state has the right to govern itself, and they allow the cities to do it. It's different with state police and sheriff's departments. In most states, the sheriff's departments used a uniform type of system for their vehicles. And Hata had an exchange of personalities with the Gresham 911 exchange and the police this AM. Well, you know what, hun? You know, I'm not disappointed. You got to remember the way. If you had an exchange with them, then if something was going on that caused you some kind of need to have that exchange, and you were probably very emotional from that, it was on them not to be emotional, be professional. So the thing is that you need, don't worry, I'm not disappointed in you. I know what kind of person you are. You aren't the kind of person that just goes out looking for a fight with cops. Is the proper mental health support easily accessible for law enforcement officers? No. And there's also a stigma to it too. I guarantee you that in a lot of departments, if they find out that you're going through work with counseling with a social worker, you're going through treatments with a psychiatrist or psychologist, number one, you're going to turn out to be a pariah within your department. People are going to be going after you like crazy. And in some departments, they're actually going to put you on leave and you're not going to be able to work. So that's one of those things that really needs to change in the world of law enforcement, because it's not good. That support system needs to be in place. PT Bird. This is the first time I've heard of this. It's better to drive during the day, i.e. when have these events happen, most at night or day. I'm handicapped and hard getting in and out of the car. Well, the thing you got to think about is these police impersonators are opportunists. All right. They see something that they think that they can actually get out there and get some kind of recognition and have people acknowledge them as someone of authority and in power. So day and night, it's happening both nowadays. It used to be you only saw these guys at night because there was fewer people out and they were able to get out there and do these things. But the big thing is that you get pulled over, you need to immediately let the officer know, I'm disabled. I have very difficult, I don't have the ability to get in and out of the vehicle as easily as normal people. Well, not normal people without disabilities. And I do apologize and saying normal on that. But you need to let them know I'm disabled. I have the inability to move quickly. I can't get out of the vehicle like a normal person could. And hopefully the officer not only is going to be appreciative that you let them know, but they're going to give you, hopefully they'll let you have a break. The thing is, you're an American. You have the right to drive anytime you want. All right. Our Constitution gives us the right to free travel in the United States. Now, there's certain things that, like with our sovereign citizens, who say that gives them the right to not have a license, not have a registration or insurance or anything. That's total BS, because the roads that they're driving on are paid for under tax dollars and are put in place by our government. So they have a right to regulate what's going on with that. But you have a right to get out and travel. You can go, if you live in Michigan, you can, like I did. I drove down to Kentucky yesterday, spent the day in Kentucky and drove back. And I'll be damned if I'm going to have an officer ask me, what are you doing going to Kentucky? I'm a citizen of the United States and I want to go to another state, which is legally allowed. And that's what I'm doing. So yeah, you drive when you need to. And, hopefully you're getting something that helps you to be more mobile and being able to get in and out of your car. But thank you for that question. Annie Kurtz, did you hear about the lady walking across the street in Ann Arbor? A guy jumped out of nowhere, stabbed her. Seems like a tool press. It seems like it took the press a long time to report. Well, I can tell you anything that happens in Ann Arbor like that, they don't want that getting out there. It makes it look bad because Ann Arbor is supposed to be this sweet, beautiful town of love, and nothing ever happens in Ann Arbor, and nothing illegal ever happens. So I can tell you right now that unless that victim actually went to the press themselves, I could see why it didn't make it into the press, and it probably got very little coverage at all. Let's see. Did I ever talk to Aaron about the police that were in his yard? Aaron and I were actually talking about doing a live stream with that. And then, of course, the Masterson case and everything that's going on, and it just didn't happen. Hopefully, we'll be able to come back to it at some point. When I first saw it, I was like, yeah, Aaron got swatted. But nope, it's not what happened at all. So hopefully we're going to be able to get that out there and do that. No, I did not go to the Kentucky Derby. I'm actually not a fan of the Kentucky Derby. Number one, I'm not a fan of horse racing or dog racing or anything like that. And as you know, I have a history of being someone with animal rescue, and I don't like anything that uses animals in those situations. And then number two, it's a little too bougie for me. You know, the big hats and everybody paying, $100 for a mint julep, and I just not my kind of scene. I don't drink anyway, so no, I'm just not a big fan of the Derby. Let's see, Terry Ray, major college towns do not like bad press, and they will do, and it seems like they do everything they can to avoid it. No, we're not going to have flying cars by the year 2000. You know that. Let's see, Annie Kurtz.
You never know, Bo.
Do you think people are aware of what the bad guys are planning? It seems like it's not very well known. What do you think about this for knowledge of crime? I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about, Annie. Let me know a little bit more in depth what you're talking about. I've never heard of this knowledge of crime before. It may be some new term that they're using. I mean, if you'll notice, it used to be we called people suspects, and now they call them persons of interest. So, and it's just, they change these things all the time. Awesome. Animals are here to love and be loved. I understand it's big business. I mean, you go like yesterday driving through Lexington and the Lexington area and seeing all of the huge horse farms out there, and, just multiple $1 million horse ranches that they have out there. And what are they doing? They're doing it specifically to breed animals to run at top speed. And if the horses end up breaking a leg, they put them down, and it's all for what? So someone can go and place a bet on whether or not that horse is going to win. So someone else can make money running a track, so that someone else can make money running a stud service. I'm not behind that in the least bit. Let's see, mens rea, the criminal intent. If you have the intention of doing illegal actions, they can prove it usually. Okay, I see what you're getting at with that. That's, if you look at a lot of the crimes that are out there, the thing is that crimes are crimes of intent, and most of your crimes that you have an intent base that are put behind them. There are certain ones like speeding, those kinds of things, where they're not an intent-based kind of crime, but a lot of them are. The thing is that in this day and age, with the way some people are acting, it's crazy because there's no intent. They just do it. And it dumbfounds me. Let's see. I find that offensive. I do not identify as a person. I identify as a people. I am, however, someone of interest. I'd like to know who finds you of interest, Alex. I think that's where you should be offended.
Where Alex is being monitored and tracked. Don't worry.
Let's see here. PT Bird. Thank you, Mr. Poe, for thoughtful answers. I appreciate your point of view. I'm concerned about the police with all the bad publicity. They don't deserve it. And it's just like with anything else. People are going to magnify the negative stuff, and the positive stuff isn't as interesting to them. So it's just how it goes. We know how it is. We put up with a lot. I mean, I've literally had people spit in my face for being a police officer. I had one woman that I was arresting literally have her daughter just start biting my arm. She took bit a big chunk out of my arm.
Jesus.
Had to go to the hospital. I had to get a tetanus shot. Had to get a bunch of shots because, you know, the mouth is the dirtiest part of the human being. And here it is. I got this kid come up and just ripped a chunk out of my arm.
Jeez.
And let me tell you, that was one of the worst pains I ever had. I don't never want to get bit by something that's going to eat me. Lady Veritas, Chad, do you think you're fooling us with that book? We know you got a Batman comic in there. Let's see it. Open it up.
Well, Doug Kramer gave me this book, and we're going on Poe on the Go later to make some announcements later this month.
Yeah, we've got some big announcements coming up with Clearwater Chad there. So, Jobo, question. The cartels are heavily infiltrating Australia, New Zealand. Are they still rampant in the U.S.? Of course, they're growing by the day. You got to remember, I retired from my first department in 2016. And I remember seeing scenes where officers would pull a car over and literally 4 and 5 guys would get out of the car, walk to the trunk, pull out AK-47s and start firing on police cars. I mean, these gangs have no fear whatsoever of dying. They have no problem with taking lives. So yeah, it's running rampant, and there's no stopping them. I mean, they run Mexico as it is now. Yeah, they have a government in place, but look at the videos where a guy is literally in his backyard firing AK-47 at jetliners passing over because they aren't paying the cartels for permission.
And then,
go ahead.
If I could interject, Bo, what we're talking about here with all this police stuff is 100% total lack of respect for the law. That's exactly what Buford T. Justice said in the movie Smokey and the Bandit.
When I get home, I'm punching your mama right in the mouth.
Great.
Are you philosophically a vegan, Poe on the Go, in regards to not wanting to harm animals? No. You got to remember, I'm also Native American, and we believe in animals just like in the animal kingdom. Other animals eat animals. We do as well. But the big thing is that we show proper respect. We don't let anything go to waste. You don't kill for fun. You kill for necessity, or in the same point, you don't just, it has a purpose, and you make sure you show the proper respect. Not a vegan. I don't believe that I personally don't believe vegan lifestyle would be healthy to me. If you feel that's the way that your life is, and you want to be a vegan and you can keep yourself healthy doing it, I just don't see it. And then when I see things like the Impossible meat and stuff like that, and how they're actually made, that terrifies the crap out of me. So let's see. Cindy Wilson, most of the time, if you respect the cop will respect you. There's always exceptions. Exactly. And that's the thing. But one of the things I think that needs to seriously be brought into law enforcement is the fact that you don't automatically deserve to be respected because you're wearing that badge. A lot of officers don't think about the fact that they're running in on one of the most insidious experiences in someone's life. And they expect the people, calm down. You need to don't. No. That's why officers need better training in how to deal with these situations, because this is the most horrible thing in someone's life that you're walking into, and you need to know how to treat people with respect. Let's see here. Shauna P. Law Nerd. I identify as a law nerd. That is natural law as well as laws passed by we the people. Respect is paramount on all fronts. Give as you get. Yeah, I believe I retired, and over 300 people came to my retirement party. And I'm not talking politics. There were some politicians there. Of course, they want to get their faces seen. But these were citizens, and they came to my retirement party because I had built real relationships with the people in the city I worked for. And they came out to congratulate me on making it, living to make it to the end of a career in law enforcement. And that's because I respect people. I don't treat everyone like a criminal. Yeah, you might have broken the law. That doesn't make you a criminal. Yeah, you got convicted for drunk driving. Doesn't make you a criminal. All right. It's someone who goes out there and repeatedly does things. And that's what becomes a criminal. But treat people with respect. And I've said it before. There's many times where I've just stopped and walked up on the porch of a senior citizen who's sitting there and talked to him for 15, 20 minutes. Just, hi, how you doing? Tell me about yourself. I walked up and sat down on the porch with a lady one time, and first off, I got there. I said, "Hey, can I join you on your porch here?" "Well, yeah, honey, come on up and sit down." So I sit down and I'm talking to her, and I find out she's 101 years old.
Wow.
Think of the history behind that. Never would have happened if I'd done like a lot of these new young officers do and just drive down the street and, hey, I'm just here to do my job, and that's what I'm doing. You want respect from the community, then you have to show respect to the community. Marshawn, have you ever eaten buffalo meat? Come on. Yeah, I've eaten buffalo meat. It's awesome. Very lean, very good meat, very high protein, excellent meat. Chad, you ever had it?
Honestly, no, never. No buffalo meat. I look forward to it someday.
Yep, you need to try it. It's good stuff. Really good meat. There's a hilarious clip of a former Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying vegan. He was so out of touch, pronounced it vegan, like can. Yeah, Boris is unique. I mean, that guy was something else. I see a lot of him in you, Alex. I see a lot of him in you.
The vegan food, I know it's not really the subject, but I'm not really a pure vegan, but I've been trying to eat a little bit of vegan food. It's actually not too bad.
It's vegetables.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make fun of anything on this point, but why is it if you're vegan and you're about not harming animals and eating, vegetables and letting animals live, why is it important to have pseudo meats, vegan chicken, vegan beef, those kinds of things? And I'm not taking a stab at you. I'd really like to know. I mean, honestly, I love a good salad. Sometimes if that's what I'm having for dinner, a good salad, just a ton of mushrooms, onions, olives, man, that stuff, I love that. But I also love meat, especially love seafood. So it's, if anybody has an answer to that for me, I'd love to hear it. So Deviant Outcast, thank you for coming and joining us. I saw you on earlier. What's your thought on U.S. gun laws in relation to these crimes? Criminals are going to gun or make it harder, make it less hard. Well, here's the thing that the media will never tell you, because the media has an agenda that they're running on everything. You look at countries like China where the people don't have the guns. What do? They're almost every day of the week, you have someone who's going up to an elementary school and stabbing children. They're stabbing them. What happened in London? You had a guy who couldn't get a gun, so he drove an SUV through a crowd of people, then got out and started stabbing people. All right. The fact is that you can take the guns away from the law-abiding citizens, and what's going to happen is the people who want the guns, the criminals that want to have the guns and they need them to commit crimes, they're going to get them, and they're going to find a way. If they can't get them, they'll go to the next tool. I think that the biggest problem as it comes to the crimes that are mainly being blamed on the gun is the lack of mental health in this country. And that started during the Ronald Reagan era, where they started defunding mental health services in the country. But you can't just blame it on him. You have to blame it on the Democratic Party as well, because after him, you had Democrats who didn't put it back in place and also continued to defund the system as well. And, sorry if you don't like it, if you're a Reagan fan or if you're a Democrat and you don't like that. But the fact is it's the truth. They defunded our mental health system. Now we have a crisis of mental health that is going on in this country. And we have people that have no way of getting the mental health that they need. And that's, it's a shame. It's a real shame. And unfortunately, folks like myself, in the law enforcement category, we're the ones who have to pick up the pieces. And because it's quite simple, well, you know what? Let the cops deal with it. So, Shauna P. Lallner, my people are Roma, my other side, and Lumbee. Now, I don't know what Lumbee is, but I know what Roma is. If we can be a family, anyone can love each other. Awesome. Excellent. Yeah. I know what Roma is. I've never heard of the Lumbee. I'm familiar with that nationality identity. So, Jay Dice, may I make a suggestion for day one of training? If you want someone to calm down at work or elsewhere, never say calm down. Yeah,
that's good.
That's my goodness. I just saw something the other day where it says never in the history of rage has the words just calm down ever calmed anyone down. And that's, that's the truth. Going in and going, now just calm down, folks. The way I always did it was if I walk in and people are loud and aggressive, I keep lowering my voice as I'm talking.
Tell them to put their heads on their desk.
Yeah, we'll have them
Heads down.
No, I just keep lowering my voice as I'm talking to them, and they have to lower their voice to hear me. And suddenly they're not screaming anymore, and they're talking. And and another thing is, don't come in and just be an ass and tell people you better do this. No, you need to show, be respectful to get respect. Let's see, B Baron. It's not. The fake meats are as bad for you as meat. I disagree. I don't think that meat is bad for you. And I understand you're a vegan, but you have folks like that go on a meat only diet, and it's not doing any permanent harm to them. Human beings are omnivores, where if you look at the structure of our teeth, it's made for ripping and tearing with our front teeth and with our canines and our incisors. And then our back teeth are made for grinding what we're eating up to be digested. I disagree with the fact that meat is bad for you. I understand, where you're coming from, and I understand your thoughts on it. I just disagree on the meat point of it. Deviant Outcast, Poe on the go, 100% with you on the mental health deal. I'm Swedish and we have very strict gun laws. It's worked for a long time, but now gun violence is up since 2017. And you look at that and you have a country where they have very strict gun laws. Look at what happened in Australia. The thing is that the gun laws have, all they've done is taken guns away from the law-abiding citizens. The criminals, they weren't going and turning their guns in. They were hiding them off somewhere, and the point is that if someone wants to cause mass harm, they're going to do it. I mean, look at the guy in, where was that, Wisconsin, where the guy drove the truck, or Minnesota, drove the truck through the Christmas parade and then went on to be a complete clown in his court case, and B. Baron, I'm not trying to argue with you. All right. I just go by what scientifically is said and talking to actual paleontologists, archaeologists, and talking to them about that. And the fact is they say that our teeth are made to tear flesh, and that we have evolved throughout the years, that our teeth have changed to do differently, but they have evolved to do that. So, let's see. And no, B. Baron, I'm not, that's taking us way down a path I don't even want to get into. Here's the point. I respect you as a vegan, and I respect the fact that that's what you want to live by. But you're not going to convince me to be a vegan. You're not going to convince me that it's harder on my body to eat animal flesh. All right. I'm a Native American. It's one of my God-given rights as a Native American to believe that way and to respect the animals. And you're not going to be able to convince me on that, just as I'm not going to be able to convince you to come over to the side of eating meat. So, I respect you on that point, but neither one of us are going to budge on that one. And here we are. Guess what time it is, Chad?
Time to talk about electric cars?
Hey, oh yeah, go for it. I want to hear this.
I think it should be a whole series about why electric cars are superior and the whole nine. I respect anyone that doesn't want to drive an electric car, though.
Tell us about what car you have, Chad.
Oh, I have a 2018 Nissan Leaf.
It's not a 2023? OSA
No,
doesn't
not yet.
provide you with a 2023? Is that what it is? No, go ahead.
No, but it goes pretty good. I've never been stuck like some people think and blah, blah, blah.
What's
I
your
haven't bought
main
gasoline. Oh, up to 150 miles on a charge.
Let me pull up a picture of one.
No, I haven't bought any gasoline in 3 years.
I think that's because you're just a hater.
I respect anyone that likes to buy gasoline, though. That's their privilege. That's their right.
Well, you know what? It is that's a cute car. It's tiny though.
Dorky looking car, but I like not buying gas. I prefer to drive a Tesla, but
yeah, that's
the
the thing.
one.
It's
the white one too. Yep.
Oh, yours white also.
Yep.
You know what? I think it's it's a cute little car. I'm not, dissing it in any way. I just, I drive a, 2008 Kia Spectra. And the reason for that is because with the wife having the courier service, we put thousands and thousands and thousands of miles on a car in a year. It's nothing for my wife to put over 100,000 miles on a car in a year's time. So if we go out and we buy a brand new car and we're paying 20, 30 grand for this car, you're burning through the warranty in no time at all. And like we were talking earlier, I'm doing probably $30 to $40 a day in gas for that car. What I worry about, and we've talked about this previously, is I worry about how far you can actually go, in a situation like we're in with an electric car.
Yeah, you're gonna want to consider that. That's one of the few things that you just hold off until the new electric cars will be able to handle that range, but they will be expensive for the next few years. I bought my car 2 years, 2 years old, which is a good time to buy a car. So in 2 years,
okay,
it would probably be. Yep, my car was like 20 grand with 14,000 miles on it. So it's
okay. Well, 14,000 miles, that's awesome. We've run into situations like that. I had a 2011 Chrysler 300. When I bought it, it had 11,000 miles on it, and man, was that a beauty!
Yeah, it's like brand new.
Let's see, where we have a lot of 40 below. Okay, that's another good question. Cindy Wilson brought up where she lives. They have 40 below, a lot of 40 below, and she drives an F-150. How does the cold affect your batteries and the battery life on your vehicle?
Well, okay, I can answer that two different ways. Mm-hmm. Number one, respectfully. All right, so it will take range, but same way a gas car will take more when it's like 40 below. So how you have to, it'll idle up. Okay, right. So to combat that, since the range is a problem, you keep it plugged in and you run the heater. So when you unplug it, when you have to go somewhere, it's nice and warm and it's still full. So at least you're starting off your trip at a full charge. You'll lose about 20% range. Extreme low temperature.
Okay, now I got a question. Heating and air conditioning, how does that affect your range?
Well, even the 2018 Leaf has a hybrid heater. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with those? It's a reverse air conditioner, like a heat pump.
Oh, okay.
So, so it doesn't. The older cars, they would take a lot more range, but this one, it sucks 8% range out of when you run the stuff.
Yeah. Postate says it never gets cold in Clearwater. How would you know anything about the cold?
That's true. Alex is on his game.
You're just a well-studied person. Let's see. Oh, here's a really good one for you and you and doing the painting. Do you delve into the paint pouring abstract hobby? Such a big thing on the internet, and I have to say I quite enjoy it. I got to say also I like seeing that paint pouring stuff. I love seeing like the resin pouring and all that. I just have I know I'll mess it up the first few times I try it, and I'm not willing to pay all that money for it. So
I have to look into it. I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, yeah, you got to check that out. That's really cool stuff. Let's see, Apostate Alex. I just caught you out, Chad. You are exposed.
Chad will still admit to nothing.
Let's see here. PT Bird. I've heard that the batteries may last 10 years and it costs $10,000 to replace them. To me, that cuts down buying an EV secondhand. I know several people who have classified them as great paperweights.
My car has 59,000 miles on it. It is still registers at 100% battery capacity. So we'll see when it gets to 100,000, it goes down to 99%.
Let's see here, Terry. Paint pouring is so wasteful to you. Expand on that, Terry. Why you think it's so wasteful? Let's see here. Trying to look down through here. And folks, we are at 2 hours and 4 minutes into this live stream. And I thank every one of you who have been here. Chad, thank you so much for joining me as always. I'm going to be joining Chad tomorrow on his live stream while he's doing his artwork on there. Let's see, J Dice resin, paint and resin pouring. Now I have a new rabbit hole to hide. I just, with me, let's see, Terry Ray, you pour the paint, let it drip off the sides and leaves puddles. Huh. I've never really thought about that. So I just know that I love the resin pouring, but I know I'm going to waste it and it's going to cost me a crap ton of money. And just for trying something. And I just want to, I don't know. But folks, again, thank you so very much. We appreciate each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day and being here with us and sharing it with us and sharing your thoughts and emotions on things. We may not agree on everything, and we probably won't, but you know, it's the fact that we can have open and honest dialogue without having arguments. And, you know, just remember, as I always say, you get one shot at this life, make it count. And thank you very much.